Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Bloom Carroll Local School District planning session meeting held on March 20th, 2019 in the middle school library. Mr. Begum, if you would do roll call, please.
Mr. Abbott, Mr. Bratton,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Millis,
Present.
Ms. Parker.
Present.
And join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item D, consider approval of the agenda. Anybody have any questions in regards to it? I think for the most part, as we went over our last planning session, I think we covered some of the topics that you were looking to for the wish list, Mr. Hahn. So at this time, if there's no questions, if I can get a motion. So moved. A second. You did second. Yeah, you did. Yeah. So Mr. Millis made a motion. Ms. Parker second a motion. Roll call.
Mr. Millis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Bratton?
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson?
Yes. Item E, planning session, Mr. Hahn.
Okay, so obviously with the 1920 school year coming up, I mean, we're trying to wrap up one school year, but we start thinking about the next year, about a year in advance, it seems like. So throughout the winter, we've had some discussion about areas of concern, needs of the district. Travis and I have worked very closely with our administrative team, our supervisors, directors, principals. And as always, this time of year, we get to the point where last month we presented at the planning session a wish list of items from every department. And I wish that the finances always allowed us to do exactly what every supervisor, director, principal needed us to be able to do. But we have to operate in a conservative manner fiscally, and that's one of our goals. It's one of our guiding principles, and it's important that we continue to adhere to that. So Travis and I work with them, and then we have to determine recommendations to the Board of Education. And there are several items we want to go over tonight as it pertains to personnel and staffing priorities for the district, curriculum supplies priorities, and then also the capital outlay priorities or any facility improvements. And then I'm going to have Travis talk a little bit about the actual budget with what has been allocated and what's been approved and what we would need to approve on this wish list moving forward. And I'm going to give you a good idea as to what we would like to recommend at the April board meeting in terms of capital outlay and even some personnel. Those are things that typically have to be approved. A lot of the other things and the funds that they come out of is already part of the general fund, which you guys approve annually. So I guess let's jump in right away and start looking at personnel and staffing. And I guess what I want to remind you, I guess you could pull it up, but you get an enrollment report every month. And we've gone over this for several months. I told you that this is going to continue to be an issue. We've continued to see an increase in student and resident enrollment population throughout the last 3 years. I think the last 3 years I was looking, we've had about 160 new resident employees. We've cut back over the last 4 years close to 60 open enrolled students during that time period to try to balance it out. But we are in a tough position in terms of lacking classroom space and a growing student enrollment population. There are some needs, there are some concerns that I have in terms of making sure that we work very well. We have a good relationship with BCEA, but there are some areas that we need to address in terms of our negotiated agreement. And at the middle school and high school, teachers can see 170 students per day. At the high school, they can't exceed 170 per agreement between the building principal and the unit member. But at the middle school, they're not to exceed 170 students. And currently, we've hovered in 6th grade this year at about 180, 182. Right now, we're at 178. I really don't see that over the next few years dropping much below 178. If anything, that will continue to grow. So next year's class is already around 180 in 7th grade. Our 5th grade class this year, next year's 6th grade class is at 169. They have been up to 170. So there are two issues right there, and our teachers have worked very well with us. But we have not added any staff at the middle school in several years. In terms of teaching staff, I've been here 6 years. That enrollment has increased to about 60 to 80 students at the middle school, and we haven't added any staff members, instructional staff members at the middle school. So because of the contract, and because our two largest classes in the school district are at the middle school, I would like to see if the board has any concerns, but I am leaning towards recommending in April two teaching positions. One would be a ELA and social studies position for grades 4 to 9. That's how they're licensed from the state of Ohio. And then another teacher for science and social studies in grades 4 through 9. Mr. Young, Mr. Matchett, Ms. Johnson started working actually in August before the start of this school year on a master schedule that, by adding 2 staff members, would eliminate the issue of teachers seeing more than 170 in terms of grading and the number of kids that they have to assign grades to. It would drop them down in today's enrollment to about 150 students per day, well within our negotiated agreement, and I really see those as priority areas. Don't know if there's any questions, but those items on the wish list are lines 19 and 20, ELA and social studies, and then the math and science. You can see on average, a new teacher with full benefits cost us, Travis, about $55,000 to $56,000 with the starting salary and full insurance or family insurance. So we kind of assume the worst case scenario when we're budgeting on a lot of these things. But that alone in personnel is $110,000. I believe Travis has commented that in the 5-year forecast for the fiscal year, a couple positions are built in. But my concern is that when you look at potential deficit spending, and again, it's going to be close at the end of this year to see if we break even. But I also feel that there's a need potentially with our 3rd largest grade, which is kindergarten, at 168 students or 28 students per class right now. Those students will be moving into 1st grade. Again, I don't think our district is really going to get any smaller. From one week to the next, we might fluctuate where we drop 1 or 2 students, but if within a matter of a couple months, we have students move in, and it bounces you right back up to where you are, but we're gradually increasing. But I see 168 students plus in kindergarten. Now, those teachers are technically by contract can see up to 30 students, okay, in their classrooms. I have a professional and moral and just an ethical concern about having that many little kids in a classroom, and I've had that for the entire year, and I brought that up this winter about how do you try to stay in your operating budget and still address the classroom needs both in the middle school and potentially in the primary school. We know how difficult it is, but there's a potential that if we can free up classroom space, and we can talk about this tonight. I'm working hard with the ESC on a preschool situation. I don't have an answer on it yet, but we could also move some staff around. They would be majorly inconvenienced. We would lose a computer lab at the primary school, but we have to prioritize some things. And I've worked with the staff. I've been to staff meetings with the primary school staff. I've met with the principals multiple times. But what I'm saying is, the priority right now is probably 2 positions in the middle school, and then the next, if we have to add another position, it's going to be in 1st grade. Because I don't have a clear answer yet on the classroom space at the primary school, I don't plan on recommending a 1st grade position in April. I could see it coming in May or even June, but then my next concern is, once we do that and we determine where that classroom space is in terms of moving people around, my next concern is that what happened last summer, we sat at 148, 9 kids in kindergarten, which was comfortable. And then in August, we had 20 more show up. If that happens again, we can write it out just like we did this year, or we may have to add another position late in the summer if that enrollment, or if we're lucky enough to know in June that enrollment's at 170, we might have to decide if we have to do that right then and there.
So where would you house them?
Well, so trying to explain this to people that aren't in the buildings every day can be very difficult. But I guess the best way is we have some options. One of the classrooms in the modulars is for Title I and ELL, English Language Learners, that also do some intervention together. That classroom sees kids all day for Title I reading and math intervention. Those two teachers could move into what is a computer lab that is also shared as a guidance counselor's office currently. All right, that would get rid of the computers in there. That would put 3 adults in one modular classroom doing intervention and counseling services. I have concerns about confidentiality, things like that. Okay, we would try to divide those. The fire department won't let us put doors on to build interior walls where they're enclosed. All right, but we can try to do the best we can and build some partition walls in there, okay? That would free up a classroom for, let's say, first grade, if we had to do that. We have room here at the middle school, it's not an issue, but when we're talking about the primary school positions, we would be able to move those 2 teachers. If it was then determined later in the summer that kindergarten needed a new teacher, well, at that point, being late in the summer, we would have to move music over to the middle school, to the end of the hallway down here. And part of our wish list on line 15 includes putting a card swipe, electronic card swipe key access on the doors at the end of this hallway.
So that's definitely.
So the kids would have to come across from the primary to the end of the hallway. Now that's not ideal for the middle school, who will have primary kids in their building playing musical instruments at the end of the hallway. And it's not ideal for the primary school.
No.
What we're looking at potentially doing, and Dr. Ward, as you know, we do our preschool program through the ESC. It's called the Learning Steps Preschool. They bill us, they take care of all the preschools. But we house 2 classrooms over here. Been working with her on potentially, there are several county consortium classrooms at Amanda Clear Creek, Bird Union, Millersport. We have one in Bloom Carroll at the high school. Liberty Union, all these different schools around the county house a county consortium classrooms where all the districts will send their kids depending on the type of identified disability that they have. There's a possibility we might be able to move an emotionally disturbed K-3 unit from Liberty Union to another school. That would potentially open up a classroom in Liberty Union's elementary for us to house our preschool students, okay? We have been sending students to Liberty Union and to Amanda Clear Creek because we don't have room in our 2 classrooms. We've been doing that for years, okay? So by doing that, what's the benefit of that? Well, if we can make that determination in the next month and a half or 2 months, now I feel very comfortable putting in a first grade teacher in what is our preschool classroom. Okay, the kids that live on this side of the district, in terms of preschool, we bus them over to Liberty Union, okay? The kids that are on the Bloom Township side for preschool would go to Steve's building where we have a preschool classroom. Liberty Union is the closest elementary school to our school district and to Greenfield Township, okay? So it would not be any real extra cost in terms of doing that, okay? So if that works out, then we can put a first grade teacher over there in that preschool classroom. Now, later in the summer, if August rolls around or late July and we need a kindergarten teacher because enrollment in kindergarten is really high, now I can easily move our Title I intervention and our ELL intervention into the computer lab. Within a matter of a week, we can put those walls together and make that quick transition. What I can't do is make a quick transition of, if I go ahead and put a first grade teacher in where the title services are right now, and then later in the summer I need another classroom, I can't move preschool 2 weeks before school or even a month before school. So that's why I would like to hold off on making a recommendation whether we add a first grade teacher, because I want to kind of identify the space better before we get there. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
at all?
when's Dr. Wood supposed to get back with you?
I'm working with her every couple of weeks, talk to her on the phone, I have meetings with her, we have county superintendent meetings. She's confident that something will happen, and that is the best solution, because that really allows those students to stay full day. Now, keep in mind, we're talking in preschool, we have 16 students over here, and we have 16 students in Lithopolis at Bloom Elementary, at the intermediate school. All right, 8 of those students, 8 over here and 8 over there are special needs. Those are the ones by law we have to educate. The typically developing students, the other 8 kids in this classroom and the other 8 over there are typically developing. Their parents can choose to send their kids to preschool wherever they want. Now, out of the 16, about half of them are moving on to kindergarten anyway. So there would be about 8 families that would have to transition. Let's say we decided, let's just go to half-day preschool, and I can move this classroom over there, and they can go to the afternoon over there.
Didn't we hear that they weren't doing that much in the afternoon?
They sleep.
After lunch?
They sleep and have snack. Yeah, they're 3 and 4 years old, you know? So I guess my point is, that's an option, but we would have the only preschool unit, and we tried to talk to the other superintendents about, you know, will anybody else offer a half-day option? So we're not the only one. They don't want to do it, okay? So we would
They don't want to do a half day.
They don't want to do a half-day option. They're all doing 4 days right now. Now, that would mean about 8, 9, 10 of our students and their families that are on a full day this year would go to a half day. That would be a transition for them, and they would, but it's a preschool, it's not K-12. All right, trying to do that with kindergarten. If you guys think back, the benefit to that, there were positives and negatives with the kindergarten option, but what that did do is it allowed us to not add staff beyond what is already in the budget. We could have used our existing staff members, and we had the classrooms. By not going to half-day kindergarten or not wanting to pursue that, which, you know, we got to listen to our community, the board, I have to listen to the board. That wasn't an option people wanted to pursue. So now I'm talking to you about our next options if we're not bringing in trailers. And at this point in March, it's a very late start to bring in modulars for 2 years. And you guys know what the cost is to do that, okay? And our community didn't want to do that either. So I'm just telling you that I think that there's a good chance we're going to need a first grade teacher. You know, I may just be able to move the title people into the computer lab and it's done with. But my concern is if I have to add a kindergarten classroom later on, where am I going to put them? I'd like to be able to determine where the preschool is going first, and then put a first grade teacher in there. Then if I have to add kindergarten, I can move the title people 2-3 weeks before school if I have to. And they're all aware of that. We've talked about the options for moving. One of the worst case scenarios, I don't know if it's worst case scenarios, but one of the most inconvenient scenarios is to have music over here, primary K2 music in the middle school, when 7th grade students at the end of the hallway are trying to do math, reading, but we may not have an option.
Where would they actually be doing music though?
At the end of the hallway
So
in the
they would
classroom.
actually, okay, so they would be in a
We would clear out a
classroom.
classroom, we would bring those risers over like we
Okay.
have in the modular,
Okay.
and that's how they would do it. So that's kind of where we are with staffing. So potentially with staffing, there could be 4 teaching positions. I think 3 is likely, 2 would be definite. I would like to bring 2 middle school positions to the board in April. If you guys have any questions, or if I'm not explaining this well, I know
I've got
I've
a
talked.
question, or I got a couple ideas.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I'm saying it, I'm prefacing that. A long time ago, there was a problem at the intermediate building with mobile. So for about 2 months, I think, they moved students to the Methodist Church in Lithopolis.
Yeah.
Are there any, I'm not trying to do anything violating church and state or anything like that.
Right.
Because I really believe there should be a separation. But are there any spaces around the communities, plural, that could be used for that purpose? I'm not saying it's
Potentially,
ideal.
yes, and I've talked to some, but what happens is they're not going to do that for free. So they in turn build, if the ESC says, we're gonna put a Boone Carroll preschool in your church, they're gonna say, okay, that's going to be $20,000 for the year.
Oh,
That
okay.
cost with a fee is passed on to us, and Travis writes the check to pay for that.
Okay.
So there's also some things with operating standards with preschools. For example, when we put the preschool in at the intermediate school, Travis and Lynn had to put in a fence
Fence, yeah.
around the playground. We didn't have a fence around the playground.
Oh,
So these private places have to do things like that. Well, we're gonna be the ones paying for it. And this is, there's some hypotheticals here, because I don't know if I'm going to need a kindergarten position. I hope our enrollment's 150. If it is, I don't need a kindergarten position. But we know that there's a chance that that's not gonna happen, okay? But where I am confident, we have classrooms, we have a need, we have a contract issue, we need to address the middle school. I would like to bring those two positions. Chad Scott and Jamie Johnson have a good schedule in place. It will require some changes. Teachers won't just teach, some of the teachers won't be teaching just 7th grade language arts or just 7th grade math. They may have a couple sections of 6th grade math and 4 sections of 7th grade math, but it can get them under 150, okay? So that, I guess as we look at personnel.
I got a question for you in regards to that. Are the teachers aware that whoever could possibly get this position, if they could have a prep for 6th grade and a prep for 7th grade, so they're made aware?
Yeah, I mean, when it's posted, it'll be posted as middle school ELA,
Right.
social studies.
Okay.
So it won't be grade specific, and that'll allow flexibility. But it'll be a middle school teaching position in a licensed area that typically these teachers, come out with license, a dual licensure like an ELA in social studies or math and science in grades 4 to 9.
what's their contracts? I mean, at least when I taught, I mean, your contract came to you, if you were up for contract, and it basically said, you know, you were gonna be teaching 7 through, in my case, 7 through 12 social studies.
Right.
Didn't say where, didn't say what classes.
Right. So I guess if you,
Licensure takes care of that, deciding.
if you look at the spreadsheet, line 19 and 20 would be the middle school positions. And then if you go down to lines 47 and 48, there's a potential there. You can see the note at the far right side is dependent upon space and enrollment. But I think for budgeting purposes, I always prefer worst case scenario, okay? So we're factoring those in right now. And then if you flip over to the back on page 70, or line 72, we even went in and factored in, you know, if we, let's say, you know, in the next month, we had to decide that the preschool schedule would, I worked with Dr. Ward and we said, we're gonna move preschool to half day. That means you have to transport the students in the middle of the day. Well, I worked with the transportation office. We would need two drivers, that's what we have now, to run a midday route. If you look at the average salary for drivers in the middle of the day, it would be about an extra $5,700 per year in salary to add per driver. Okay, so a total of about $11,000 to $12,000. And again, we have that factored in too, to the bottom line for personnel costs. Now, the good thing about this is potentially, I think, you know, one of the teaching positions in these preschool routes, the cost built in, that will come off. I think that will come off. I hope so, okay? But we're factoring it in just for budgeting purposes, okay? So that's personnel at this point. I think we have to prioritize teaching positions. Every department requests personnel, but I think if you're looking at our class sizes, I think we have to prioritize, in my opinion, teaching positions as a priority. Okay. Thoughts on that?
I totally agree with you.
Disagree? Agree?
No, I agree. And if you
No,
look at,
Steve.
to your point on the middle school, I mean, you can go deeper back into you're at 165. I mean, you easily can see 4 or 5 kids
Absolutely.
moving into the district. So it's not as though adding these 2 positions in the middle school is only alleviating a problem for 1 to 2 years. It's multiple years.
Yeah, and as you look at our enrollment, like you said, we're 178, 169, 165, 164, but then we're starting, it's not great relief, but we see a little bit of relief because we've been able to control open enrollment.
Right.
It drops to 146, 158, you know, and then we got this big kindergarten class. So we might be able to, if we have to put more positions in than what's budgeted this year, we may not have to put as many in next year, and we may recoup a little bit of that down the road, okay? Travis, anything on personnel, anything else that I'm forgetting there?
No, I mean, it's, like I said, it was two, there's 2 in the forecast and 4 on the wish list. So that's basically the difference in line 86 at this point. So once the board officially approves these positions, if it's more than 2, then we'll include them in the forecast.
Any questions?
And where's the remind me where the forecast is for, not this current year, but the next year?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So this year we have a deficit projected. of
Project slight.
40,000,
A little more than that,
a
but
little more, and then what is the projected deficit?
about 180,000 right now.
The next year.
Mhm.
And that includes the updated contract.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll be updating,
Say 180.
we'll be updating that in May as a requirement, so we'll see. And we'll, as a finance committee,
Okay.
exactly. We'll review that in detail as well.
All right. The next item, which is honestly pretty good news, this is a year with our textbook adoption and rotation. I think we will be able to recoup some cost here the next few years. This is an off year for us. We don't have any major textbook adoptions being done this year in any core area or even related arts areas. We do have some, I don't want to say miscellaneous requests for curriculum and support services on the spreadsheet. And honestly, just about all those that we put a dollar amount on are ones that we would approve. When I look at, to kind of summarize it, special education, there are some speech supplies for a speech and language pathologist. There's some testing headphones with all the state testing. I believe that is at the intermediate school, line 41. And then Algebra 2 math seats for some math intervention. Algebra 2 is required whether you're special ed or regular ed or gifted. Every student in Ohio has to take Algebra 2 unless they opt out of the core curriculum. That rarely happens. So these students need some extra support. And the high school wanted to utilize a program called IXL Math, which is an intervention Algebra 2 math program. The cost overall was about $300. I think it's worth the investment. The high school and elementary school requested some STEM resources. We're looking at, over at the high school, building a fabrication lab we still have one fixed computer lab over there on the first floor by the media center, and we want to turn that into a fabrication lab. Most of our computers are being done through mobile devices now, laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, iPads, those kinds of things. So we would like to allocate $5,000 of capital money actually can be used to buy some equipment and materials for a fabrication lab over at the high school.
That's 37.
That's line 37. And then Mr. Rozeski and Ms. Pease would like to buy some additional intervention or reading benchmark kits. The DRA kits on line 49, 19 of those for around $8,000. And then also the reading benchmark assessment kits on line 42, 7 of those at $425 each, so about $3,000 there as well. And then they would like to, we have it identified as a purchase service, but the intermediate school has been working with a trainer on that specializes in math instruction. They would like to bring her back next year for a couple days to do some professional development with the staff. So you can see the total requests from the intermediate and primary school are all very reasonable, and we certainly included those. So that would be, I think that would be all your supplies and curriculum that we've identified. Yeah, that would be it. Any question, any of those? Okay. And then moving on to capital outlay, Travis certainly jumped in here, but we have some costs that are still allocated right now or planned to be allocated to come out of the general fund for some capital improvements. But as you know, we have this permanent improvement fund that the money is starting to come in. A very small portion has started to come in, but Travis has roughly about $450,000 projected in permanent improvement funds. And during the levy, if you think back to the levy, we talked about how PI money would help us maintain our facilities, assist us with the purchase of technology, buses, and improve security potentially, and take care of our facilities. So what we don't really want to do, and Travis and I are looking at the forecast and in our discussion, we want to build that permanent improvement fund over the years, because if we have a major surprise or a major improvement at the spur of the moment, we got to replace a roof like that. We have to replace heat pumps in the middle school. If we have several go out at one time 5 years from now, we want to have a maintenance fund there. What we would like to do in order to get our general fund closer to being within budget and not in deficit spending is allocate some of the money for capital improvements into the permanent improvement fund, and some of it will stay out of the general fund. But we would like to kind of build that up. We don't want to deplete that down to zero and then not be able to take care of something because we just don't have money, or we're in deficit spending out of the general fund. So we have a number of items. If you look through it, I mean, there's, at the high school, if you go back up to the top of the sheet, kind of work your way down, we have the card swipes, which is a security item being, utilizing the PI funds. We have some miscellaneous items that kind of just sort of general fund money, but replace some lights above a stairwell, paint a handrail, that's line 22. The big ticket item in terms of capital is the high school or the track that we have out here needs replaced. It's in bad shape, and it's a very expensive project. It's not something we really want to do in one payment. I think we can break this up over. If we do the full cost of the track, we're really not going to be able to do anything else this year.
What does that cost? Is that what you guys?
Ballpark, depending on, once they tear off the surface of the track and if the asphalt's in poor shape, the cost can really fluctuate. We're probably around 220. Kind of worst case figure, we're looking at 270 on some quotes. But if we have to replace the complete asphalt, it's going to be more expensive. But we've kind of projected on the high end, based upon some quotes that we have, of about $90,000 a year, maybe financing over 3 years, for a total of about $270,000.
Okay, that's cool.
So what are you gonna do this year with track, starting next week?
They were supposed to be out there today.
Cause you got like a 6-inch bump by the last light pole.
Yeah, I talked to Mr. Little yesterday. I know Travis has been working with him too. But
I wanna see somebody get hurt.
a local contractor that has been patching it for us is supposed to come out and patch that finish line. But we keep doing that, and every year we're dropping $5, $10, $15, $20,000. It needs to be milled off. Potentially a small layer of blacktop needs to be milled off, a new layer put down, and then a new track surface and striping needs to be put on. We need to look at the type. You can do latex, polyurethane tracks, and find out what would be best for the district. But we've kind of built in that we would like to move forward with that project. It's in bad shape, and if we don't take care of it, it's only going to get worse and cost us more down the road. So, kind of where we are with the track. The rest, up on the mezzanine of the gymnasium, we have bleachers that act as a wall. We have some safety concerns about kids climbing on those bleachers. Just to give you an idea, the Biddy Wrestling program uses that mezzanine area on the home side of the high school gym, and their participation in Biddy Wrestling has grown tremendously over the last few years. They went from, in 2013, they had 16 Biddy wrestlers, and now this winter they had 50 Biddy wrestlers packed into that area up there. It's not necessarily our job to provide Biddy wrestling space, but if we're going to build a program, it's nice that our young kids can use our facilities like basketball and football and other things, baseball. The middle school numbers have gone from 4 students in 2013 up to 23 wrestlers in middle school. High school numbers, we hope these numbers will continue to grow as they move into high school. But the point is, we need to provide, if we could remove the bleachers that we're no longer using, that's acting as a wall, and provide about 7 to 8 additional feet, which will be tons of square footage, it would help us out. So our maintenance team would like to take those bleachers down, save the motors on them for the bleachers that move in and out, and then we would bring in a contractor. We got a quote to build a wall, a safe wall out of steel frames and very thick drywall that can withstand a baseball for about $13,000 to build a wall up there and anchor it into the cinder blocks and into the floor. And that's one of the projects we would like to do as well. So
How high would it be?
about 10 feet. About 10 feet. There would be
The wall would
bracing.
be-
The wall would be 10 feet, yeah, with some bracing on the top. So we'd like to do that this summer. The AC units, line 30 at the high school, we have 6 or 7, and we need to check that. I think we have 6 or 7 classrooms that we need to finish. That would make all the high school classrooms at least with a window air conditioner, or some of them have like a mini split unit, a Mitsubishi unit. So that's something we've been working on for 4 or 5 years now, I think. They would like to try to circulate the air better in the cafeteria. I think this cafeteria fan could be an issue, potentially trying to get it installed. The industrial fans hang down. It's a low ceiling. Those are asbestos ceiling tiles in the cafeteria, so I'm not sure how much we can really move those, if at all, really. So we might look at some box fans or wall fans, industrial fans that we can mount on the wall to keep air moving in there. But we built a cost in for that. The courtyard, we've removed some trees out of there. The grass is not growing or wasn't growing. We removed some trees. The leaves were getting in the gutters on the roof, causing roofing issues. But between our maintenance and Eagle Scout and our FFA program, they would like to work with Mr. Conrad and kind of dress up that courtyard, maybe do some landscaping out there as well. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm just kind of going through this here.
I have one question really related to capital outlay and your point on kind of building what I'd call a contingency fund related to capital outlay. Has Mr. Pugh and the maintenance individuals ever given you kind of a list ranking what they believe will probably go next? So to your point, a roof,
Yeah, it's really on this list, and that's really a good segue. If you look at line, because this comes up every year, and you really hit on it just now, line 58, asbestos abatement in the high school. Line 61, new roof for the second floor. We just did the cafeteria in that area this past summer. And then line 65, replacing that water main that comes off of Plum Road and comes in back to the courtyard. Those 3 things are things that they've hit on a lot that could go at any time. And truthfully, again, as we looked at this list, those were 3 things that we thought, okay, we're not going to deplete the PI fund, but these are 3 things that they need designed, they need engineered, we can't, and they need bid. And then those things just take a long time. And where we were this spring and everything with all the construction going on, we just felt like if these are things that we can kind of look at next winter, hopefully everything stays, cohesive there. But look at next winter, design, bid about this time next year, and then those are perfect things to come out of that PI fund.
and I think,
that point.
I guess my point is that's critical, right? Which it sounds like they're doing, because you just described the timeline, which is crazy to me that it's almost a full year.
Yeah,
Right?
it really.
And you're talking about something that most likely should be addressed now.
Yeah,
Right.
but if you're meeting with contractors and doing pre-bids right now, and you're trying to get them on your schedule for June and July with all your summer stuff, cost is going to be higher. It's late because you're gonna have to accommodate your schedule, and it's just darn near impossible starting in February or March. Travis and I talked about it, and that abatement, that second floor of the high school, we haven't had things pop up recently that have been an emergency, but we know that they've been issues, and we just feel like there's something that we need to start in December and January, like we did last year when we replaced the high school, the first floor of the high school roof. That started in January.
Right.
So we had talked about not depleting that fund, because we know that next year, we'd like to come back and those are priority items for us.
And that being said, I guess, have we put that fund, what we believe that fund should be? So, okay, I think these three items will be, I think that I would like the fund to be around 300,000-400,000. I don't know.
That's a good question. I think that's,
And
I'd
maybe
kind of look,
something that needs to be built out or thought about long term.
we've gotten a full half-year collection now, and I think that would be a good thing maybe for the finance committee to say,
Yeah.
what are we comfortable with
Right.
this fund being at, both from a contingency purpose and from an annual wish list allocation or maintenance or.
In regards to talking to Mr. Q though, in regards to, I mean, has he given you a ballpark, like, estimation on cost on what those three total
Well,
would be?
we've had previous estimates.
Yeah, the abatement itself is almost 300,000 because that includes, and all three of these things include abating asbestos. So when you have that, it's basically two separate projects.
Yeah.
You've got an engineer, you've got plans to get the asbestos out, and then you've got plans and bids to actually do the project. So it's
And they're just not ceiling tiles, it's wiring, it's new lights.
new lights.
You have to do. So it's very expensive, and that's why we know it's on the, it's priority, but I think we gotta talk about, that permanent improvement fund, using that potentially, but not depleting it.
And how much of that high school does the board want to allocate these types of resources to,
Yeah.
looking at our long-term plan?
Right.
Yeah.
What's
So-
the cost for the just estimate on that second high school?
126,000 last year.
Mhm.
126, and then for the water main?
That's a,
There's some asbestos abatement with that. too.
it's wrapped in asbestos, yeah. I think it was gonna be around it was around 40, I believe,
How
but
much was that, Trevor?
it was around 40. I think you,
Where that came from is that water line in the courtyard broke 2 years ago. We haven't had any additional problems, but that line that was dug up, the sidewalk was dug up, they patched the line, repaired that piece of the line. John, our maintenance supervisor, believes that line's in bad shape all the way throughout, so he'd like to replace it and come in off the front of the building underneath the high school office and bore in to the boiler room where the water line comes in. But again, same thing as abatement on all these projects. It's expensive.
So the three of those combined is 466,000.
That would be our capital outlay.
Or take out that-
Or take out the entire PI fund.
Found out with the IT thing.
Right. So, so they aren't being recommended right now. Another, PI fund, cost would be, we talked about the LED lighting project. If you look at page 59, or line 59, we know this is a building that's gonna be around a long time. If we can make it as energy efficient as possible, we wanna do that. We wanna finish that project. There's a rebate that anytime we do work that you can apply for annually or after, I think per fiscal.
per fiscal year.
Yeah, so he may be able to recoup up to $7,500, is what we could recoup last year. So if we know that what that's going to cost, it will pay itself back within a few years, but we also get a rebate to help bring that cost in a little bit more, okay? And then the maintenance, there are some maintenance items, with limited staff, sometimes John needs better equipment to get things done a little bit better, but they have a Polaris Ranger and RTV that needs replaced, plow truck, floor scrubber, a new one, and there is a grant that can help pay for 2/3 of that.
Does John get to use that thing, or is it just for the IT department?
Yeah, that's pretty much, you spend
Yeah.
how much money.
No, the Polaris is what the maintenance department uses pretty much. The other one's the Kubota that's kind of shared. The Kubota, they use the Kubota quite a bit too, but it's shared. Another major cost, we're looking at PI money with it, is
Sean,
the,
going back to your plow truck, not to interrupt you, but question, is that strictly, do we use that just strictly to plow the snow in the parking lots, or who does?
yeah, well,
what's that for?
here's something to keep in mind. We have two plow trucks right now. One it's just been driven hard. When you think about a plow truck, it's drive, reverse, the transmission, it's hard on it. John feels he has one that is kind of on its last leg, that he wants to kind of repurpose, move one over to Lithopolis for the intermediate school. But if you keep in mind, in 2 years, we're gonna have additional parking that we have to clear every day. and we're gonna need another truck out there at the elementary school. So, in terms of parking lots, at the intermediate school, I don't know if you've been over there and noticed, but everything in Lithopolis, it's blacktop on the hill, whether it's the main road or at the school, slides down the hill. And we need to repair, that parking lot. It's in bad shape. There's some stone and limestone, that needs to go in, and there's some paving that needs to be done. We would like to replace that drive area and parking lot area over there at Lithopolis. Again, something we plan to use as a preschool, so it's not a waste of money,
Right.
it's an investment. Remodeling the boys' bathrooms at the high school down by the gym. We'd like to clean those up, dress them up a little bit, allocate some money for John and the maintenance staff to remodel the boys and girls restrooms by the high school gym. And then there's a gutter out front of the intermediate school that constantly drips, and it causes an issue in the wintertime where people can slip and get hurt. We gotta put salt on it, but the salt sometimes doesn't always work. So we'd like to replace that gutter along the front and side where the students are picked up by their parents at the intermediate school. And then in terms of efficiency, salt spreader is cheaper than a new staff member to spread salt. So we would like to allow them to kind of be more efficient and spread the salt around the facility with a spreader. So that would go on the back of the.
They also have salt spreaders on the back of the trucks.
Yeah,
They do.
they don't make the plastic bag.
Yeah, but in terms of sidewalks and
Yeah.
stuff. Travis, you've talked to Carmen a lot about vans and buses. Why don't you talk about that, please?
Yeah, our van, we have, for the longest time, we had 2 vans. This year we added a third one back in the summer. One van has completely stopped running, and we were able to replace that van in this year's budget. The decision was made just with the smaller routes that we were going to add a 4th van. Technically, though, only 3 of those vans would be used on routes and for trips and athletic trips. We got that 4th van as a spare, so we had the new van in there to again address some transportation issues from the PI fund that we talked about during the campaign, and then to stay on in line with our school bus replacement. That to keep pace with that, we've would continue to allocate that $185,000 as one lease drops off, replacing it with a new lease. And at some point, maybe being able to just purchase them outright, but that would come later on when we were able to build up the PI fund. As you get down to the bottom here, and this is really the only part under the finances, is line 85. It's really a misnomer to say it's in the forecast. It's not in the forecast. It's budgeted. So that PI fund, we talked about roughly $450,000 budgeted per year. If we add up everything that we've labeled PI fund in this wish list, again, we would have depleted about half of that, which we talked about being comfortable with as we move forward in the next year. We talked about the personnel being 4 positions versus 2 in the forecast. We feel comfortable with purchase services and the curriculum from the forecast, well within what we are budgeting. And the big area that we've looked at and we talked about through the campaign and we've talked about with the PI fund is being able to shift those capital outlay expenditures out of our general fund and into the permanent improvement fund. If you look at the October forecast, we had $472,000. Again, that's line 89. It's in the highlighted yellow. If you take all of these wish list items, we've knocked off a little over $103,000, which you can look at 2 ways. It can either A, offset the additional personnel costs that would be a result of having to do 3 or 4 positions, or if those positions aren't needed, it will go directly to driving out that deficit or projected deficit spending because it's a direct decrease in the amount of capital outlay in the forecast. So, and then you see the total wish list, a little over $850,000, which ties back up to line 81, the grand total.
So looking at this, I mean, in the conversation, I know Mr. Bratton and the 3 of us were actually in regards to this with our finance committee meeting, but that $225,000 out of the PI, that's a pretty good start to where we want to be if we want to have the surplus and if some
Correct.
magical disaster happens.
Correct.
So I mean, that puts us in a good spot. And if we look at this, I mean, before we had budgeted too, I mean, $231,000. I think take out the PI money.
Right, we might be able to, again, the class sizes, the staff drives everything. It's a cumulative, grows exponentially. So certainly if we do add the 4 staff members there, then, we'll have some other areas to address. But I think, and to kind of put a bow on it from a capital outlay perspective, if the board's comfortable with, we'll pare down this list and bring it back to the April meeting and have you approve from this perspective the capital outlay budget for the 1920 school year, and then a separate recommendation would have to be made to add staff from the superintendent. So, but certainly if we left everything on here, even though we had not looked at it as maybe a true, not that it's not needed, but a priority. If there's something on here, and even if it comes up later on, please let us know, or something that you think maybe shouldn't be a priority that we have on here has a priority. Certainly let us know.
I think the bottom line is you can sit here and honestly say that we've been diligent in trying to make sure that we're using the PI funds for exactly what we said they could be used for: technology, buses, transportation, security, those were in the maintenance of our facilities. So those were the main things. I think we're certainly doing that. We said we could take some pressure off of the general fund and maybe prolong deficit spending, and there's a good potential for that. If you look at how this fiscal year is going with Travis's monthly reports, sometimes revenue comes in just a little bit better. We've been able to keep a lid on expenditures, and like we said, I think everybody here feels that we need to do what's right for kids, but be as conservative as possible with our taxpayers' dollars. And I feel confident when you look at the bottom line that we're quite a bit under what even was budgeted, but still addressing a lot of things, but have a plan and a timeline to potentially address some other big issues. So.
I'm really happy you guys have been very fiscally responsible in putting this together, looking at it.
On the opposite side, what would there be items that you feel are important that maybe like the last 4 out, right?
Yeah, right.
What were items maybe that didn't make the list, or that you feel, hey, I may need to come back later? Are there any, or maybe not specifics, but maybe areas?
If a water main breaks on August 22nd at the high school, the first day of school, I'll say, Mr. Bratton, you should have told me to put in a water line at the high school.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying, but that's what I'm thinking about. So how bad is it?
But that could happen to a water line running
Right.
through the village of Carroll.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But that would take from the rainy day fund, kind of what we're building.
Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Technology, it's always, we feel like, 100,000 seems like a lot, but it goes quickly, and things you feel like you just bought are 4 and 5 years old now.
Oh, yeah.
And just to give you an idea, that at that point, that's $20,000 more than what was allocated for technology the previous year. So we are investing in technology and updating, but not every group. We all can't always have everything we want, and I think that we have continued to show a commitment to improving innovation and technology, but again, it doesn't address every technology need, but 100,000 allocated for technology will help us continue to refurbish our Chromebooks, our laptops. Those have to be recycled out. There's cards and things. They're just expensive. Technology is expensive.
So Travis, are you going to speak about finances next?
That was it. That was basically it. Just kind of.
Okay. What I was wanted to bring up something. When we had the meeting that some of us attended at the EFC, I waited around for a while to go over and talk to Tim Schaefer. Well, he remembered me anyway. So I said, well, what if we came up, like 3 or 4 of us or more, and talked to you about the budget, and as you mentioned, CAPS before, and the CAPS goes back to, 30 years ago with House Bill 920, isn't that the bill that put the caps on?
It's all kind of part and parcel of the same. The caps are about 4 years old, but
those were 4 years old.
the House Bill 920 played into the original. Yeah.
Because when they passed the state income tax, then they decided that they need to give people a chance to not have to pay, not let a levy gain more than it was, put on the ballot for. So I just thought, if we want to spend the time to go up and see Tim, we could, while he's still a House member, or maybe he's going to be a senator. They're still trying to think about how they're going to fill that slot. The other thing, a long time ago, I don't know if you remember me, but you might if you saw me. One of the chairs of the finance committee is somebody I've known for a long period of time. So maybe we could even think about that.
Yeah, I think it never
Almost
hurts, it never hurts to reach out to your
doesn't hurt.
representatives in the Senate Education Committee, definitely. You know, it sounds like though Governor DeWine's budget, is spending some money in some areas, but it doesn't change
They want him to cut
the
it.
state foundation aid at this
They
point.
want to cut it, what, like fourth?
Yeah, I don't,
Something like
in terms of the state foundation formula, I don't see any change, I don't see any change with the caps. I think we'll see an increase, but it's gonna be one of those years, the next 2 years will be one that we see an increase, but it's not in line with our actual
Enrollment increase,
enrollment.
I agree.
Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Oh,
Yeah,
email
no, it's-
them, call, yeah, definitely, email them, call them,
Okay.
see if they'll meet with you, absolutely, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And Rob said he goes over there too, so, and Travis, and whoever else wants to go.
You know, and the other thing that hurts us, you know, is, I mean, property valuation per pupil, the state's always gonna say your community